Our Town Bristol is made possible by the following premier sponsor: C. Brito Construction Company, contractors for utilities emergencies and utility installation, ranging from pipeline spot improvement programs to technical projects. Family owned and operated for more than 75 years. And the following benefactor sponsors: Herreshoff Marine Museum, preserving the legacy of Herreshoff manufacturing and its history of innovation through exhibits, programming, and STEAM education program. North Coast Boats, boat builders of fishing and recreational boats for more than 40 years. Family owned and operated. Bristol Oyster Bar, serving locally harvested oysters, farm-to-table dining since October of 2014. And by the following patron sponsor: Linda Arruda.
Incorporated in 1746, Bristol, Rhode Island is at the southernmost point of a peninsula that includes Bristol County. Encompassing a total area just over 20 square miles, it's no surprise that half of those miles are water. While Bristol may be considered by some to be a small town, its nearly 23,000 residents will tell you that what it lacks in size, it makes up for in significance. This town is teeming with tradition and history, from the Revolutionary War and families at the center of the slave trade to the oldest continuously celebrated 4th of July festivities in the country. Today, residents and visitors know Bristol for its beautiful vistas, open space, the East Bay bike path, as well as dozens of museums and shops that line Main Street. In the next hour, residents of Bristol will share with you their favorite things about this town as we take you on a journey that is their vision, their voice. This is Our Town, Bristol.
Hi, I'm Karen Binder. I'm the Executive Director of Blythewold Mansion Gardens and Arboretum. Blythewold was created in the late 1890s by the Van Wickle family. Bessie and Augustus had two daughters by the name of Marjorie and Augustine. And they really wanted to create a property and a place and a home that was welcoming to all their friends, of their family, and even the community. A lot of the times the family would be outside. They would be here really as a summer residence, and they would use the waterfront, the shoreline, for kayaking, for sailing, for water sports, including water skiing. They would entertain. They would usually have 4th of July parties and Memorial Day parties. The children from the family and community would always be welcomed. We have some videotapes of the family actually flying a biplane across the Great Lawn. Marjorie was very adventurous, and she and her husband George would travel to wonderful places and bring their stories and experiences back to Blythewold and share their experience with the family. So they were really here to enjoy the property, but they were also a family that wanted to give back to the community. Marjorie volunteered for the Red Cross for more than 50 years as a driver. George served in the military. Marjorie was getting older. She had really wanted to make sure that this property would be maintained and opened and enjoyed to the public. She and her husband George never had children of their own, so she wanted to make sure that what had been created by her mother and her father was here for future generations to enjoy. So she bequeathed it to a nonprofit to keep it open to the public, and we really embrace the same traditions that the family did. With our programming, we try to appeal to all generations and everyone from different backgrounds. We have summer camp for children, we do Music at Sunset series, we do weddings and events. At Christmas, we have a wonderful display. The entire mansion is decorated for the holidays. And what's also nice is that people can come to the mansion, enjoy the Christmas, or even the April daffodils and spring flowers, and then enjoy tea in the dining room in the afternoon. We do a lot of horticultural programs, of course. We do nature walks, we do astronomy programs. We do a lot to sharing the story of the family. We were very lucky when the family passed on that they left us with all of the archives, the letters, journals, photographs, family costumes. So we really can interpret the family and share the family with others. That combined with the beauty of the gardens, that combined with this 45-room mansion that's open for tours, that includes all of the original family furnishings and artwork. It really gives people a sense of not only of the family, but of the times, so folks can come here and slow down and really step back in time.
Hello, I'm Reverend Burton Bagby Groves, the pastor here at Bristol's First Congregational Church, founded in 1680, when the town was founded. Speaking of founders, there are 4 founders of the town of Bristol and also of the First Congregational Church, and they're the same 4 people. Nathaniel Byfield, John Wally, Stephen Burton, and another Nathaniel Oliver. One of the fun things to look at is the membership ledger book that you can see here, and you see the names of those 4 people and other familiar names. One of the noted landmarks in town is the Perry Rego House, and most people don't realize that this was the first meeting place for the congregants of what was the only church in town, the Congregational Church, and the building still stands as a wonderful testament to the history of Bristol. The meeting house had pulpit panels in it, and we actually have one of those pulpit panels. It's noted by Yale University that this is one of the most significant pieces of interior church architecture remaining in America. It's from 1687. This plaque commemorates the pastorate of the Reverend Samuel Lee. Reverend Lee was much loved here, but he loved England and he wanted to go home after several years of serving our church, and so he boarded a British ship to head home, but the ship was captured by French pirates, and subsequently he sadly died in a French prison. One of the interesting things to think about and to learn about is the British bombardment of Bristol in 1775. People began fleeing, including Reverend John Burt. Reverend Burt was the settled minister at the time at the First Congregational Church, and as he fled, he was struck and killed by, well, we think we even have the cannonball, because there was a cannonball found next to his body. We also have a beautiful portrait of Reverend Henry White. He is the founder of what has become the oldest and largest 4th of July celebration in the United States. We're very proud of the fact that we're the church of the first. We're the first church, mainline church to ordain African Americans in 1783, the first church to elect a woman as a pastor in 1853, and then in 1972, the first mainline church to begin ordaining gays and lesbians. So we are about not who's in and who's out, but about proclaiming that we're all in and we're all welcome. We practice an open communion. We believe that it's Christ's table and all are welcome.
Rogers Free Library was founded in 1877 by Maria DeWolf Rogers in honor of her late husband Robert. The brownstone Romanesque Revival building stood 2 1/2 stories tall and was designed by Stephen C. Earle at the cost of $20,000. Our mission: to promote lifelong learning, encourage the joys of reading, and support the interests of its patrons. Fast forward to the year 2000. In November, Bristolians voted to pass a bond issue to expand, renovate, and equip a new library. With that money in hand, a capital campaign was initiated to raise the rest of the required funding. This was accomplished through grants, naming opportunities, and significant private donations. In 2007, the librarians packed up the collection and moved to a temporary location on Gooding Avenue while the new building was under construction. The original building was refurbished and joined to the adjacent building, which had previously been a furniture store. In order to join the two buildings through the interiors, architects cut an arch between the old and new buildings. It serves as a symbol of unification between the two. In September 2008, the new library opened to an eagerly awaiting public. This brand new 28,000 square foot facility is handicapped accessible, equipped with 40 computers, meeting rooms, and plenty of shelf space to grow. Children of all ages enjoy chess lessons, Lego building, and story time. Teens have their own area and take part in book clubs, events, and open mic nights. Adults come to learn about technology, attend writing workshops, book clubs, cooking, and fiber arts classes, and even enjoy movies on the big screen. We really shine in the summertime. In our opinion, it is the best time of year. We watch the community come together and share its joy of reading. A reading theme is established and activities support the theme. People of all ages enter reading contests, win prizes, and children parade around the block in costume to publicly show their love of reading. A strong advocate of intellectual freedom, Rogers Free Library endeavors to enrich the lives of those who avail themselves of its services and facilities. Rogers Free Library has always been and will always be the heart of Bristol, Rhode Island. We are happy to serve you and your families and look forward to growing with you in the years ahead.
Welcome to St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Bristol, Rhode Island. This is our 300th anniversary at St. Michael's, established in 1718. I'm DeWolf Fulton, a longtime member, Bristolian, a longtime member of this church. I was married here. 4 of my sisters were married here. My mother and my grandmother were married here. St. Michael's has quite a history. Organized in 1718, first erected in 1720, then burned by the British on May 25th in 1778. It later was removed to make way for a larger church. The third church burned in 1858, the fourth church erected in 1860, and that's the one we see here today. The British, when they burned it, they thought that there was munitions stored in the basement, but it was actually stored in the First Congregational Church up the street. The interior of the church, one notices, first of all, the beautiful flags of the state, the nation, St. Michael's flag, and others, and the beautiful stained glass windows, and we're going to take a closer look at some of those stained glass windows now. This first window was given in memory of Theodora Gougeot DeWolf Colt, mother of Samuel Pomeroy Colt of Colt pistol fame. These are the windows in the Servicemen's Chapel dedicated to St. Michael's and the warrior saints. At the very bottom, on the left, is the insignia of St. Michael's Church, with Mount Hope in the background and the waters of the bay in front. This window was given by my mother and father for her mother and father, Halsey DeWolf and Edith Howe DeWolf. Ferry Cliff Farm on the lower left was their beloved location down on the Ferry Point, and my grandfather in a catboat on the far right corner, and you can even see the H on his sweater for his beloved Harvard University. This window, also given by Samuel Pomeroy Colt, was given in memory of his son, young Samuel Pomeroy Colt Jr., who died at the very young age of 9. And you see his image in the left-hand panel. This last window is in memory of John Fell Howe, 1875 to 1895. It's a Tiffany window done by Tiffany. It was given by his parents. He died also at an early age, at 19. It was also given in memory of his grandfather, who died in the same year, Bishop Mark Anthony DeWolf Howe, Bishop of the whole area.
The Herreshoff Marine Museum has been around since the early 70s, and it was started by Halsey Herreshoff, who is Nat Herreshoff's grandson. The Herreshoff Marine Museum is a museum about the Herreshoff Manufacturing Company. And the Herreshoff Manufacturing Company was in business from 1878 to 1945. The Herreshoff Manufacturing Company was on the spot where the museum is today, and it was a very large company, 300 to 400 employees at its peak. The museum is also about two brothers who founded the company, Nat Herreshoff and John Herreshoff. Nat and JB were really into steam technology, and at the time, in the 1870s, steam was the high technology of the day. The brothers were very focused on trying to figure out how to innovate with steam technology, to make the engines smaller and lighter so that they could fit in boats. And for the first 12 years that they were in business, that's all they did. They really just did steam-powered boats. They got the order for, they got the contract to design and build a Defender for the 1893 America's Cup. Herreshoff Manufacturing Company played a major role in the America's Cup from that time in 1893 until 1934. During that 40-year period, the Herreshoff Manufacturing Company built all 8 successful Defenders of the America's Cup. Reliance was designed and built for the 1903 America's Cup, but Reliance was the biggest single-masted sailboat in the world for a period of 100 years. It wasn't until 2003 that somebody built a bigger one. We're sitting here in what we call the model room. Every single boat that was built by the Herreshoff Manufacturing Company started with a model just like these. The way these guys worked, Nat would essentially carve this half hull, then he would take the measurements off the hull and hand it off to the guys on the lofting floor, and they could actually start building a boat. So from the time that the boat was ordered until the time that they began building it was actually weeks instead of months. In addition to these 500 models, also includes about 70 boats. The great thing about the Herreshoff Marine Museum and its relationship with the town of Bristol is that Bristol is very much a center of marine technology even today, and the Herreshoff Manufacturing Company was really the beginning of that back in the 1870s. Here at the museum, we run a classic yacht regatta, which takes place in the end of August. We also have events here on the 4th of July, a lecture series that happens on the third Thursday of every month. The Herreshoff education program includes a sailing and seamanship program that takes place during the summer, and then it also includes elements of projects that we do in our boat shop. That's one way to come and enjoy the museum. You can also join, become a member, come stop by. If you have a boat, you can come to tie up at our docks here. That's a great way to come enjoy the museum.
Welcome to Linden Place, located at 500 Hope Street in downtown Bristol, right at the heart of the town. Linden Place was built in 1810 by George DeWolf, the third generation of Bristol's DeWolf family, who were renowned for participating in the American slave trade. The mansion was designed and built for $60,000 by architect Russell Warren of Tiverton. If it was built today in the same manner, it would cost many millions. Linden Place, originally called the DeWolf Mansion, was owned by 7 generations of the same family. One of the first sights that greets you when you enter Linden Place is this magnificent 3.5-story staircase made of walnut. In 1825, George found that he was facing irreversible financial losses. For this reason, he took his family and they fled to the family plantation Noah's Ark in Cuba. A short time after George and his family fled to Cuba, the house became owned by William Henry DeWolf. William Henry was James's son and therefore George's first cousin. However, a few years after owning the mansion, William Henry found himself also in financial difficulty. He fled from town, leaving the house in the ownership of his wife, Sarah Rogers DeWolf, whose family later gave Bristol the money for its first public library. Sarah needed means to keep this mansion afloat, and in order to do this, she turned it into a boarding house. One of Sarah's most prominent long-term tenants was Ambrose Burnside, who had come to Bristol to establish an armaments factory, and much later he became one of Rhode Island's governors. Soon, Burnside went off to fight in the Civil War. Sarah died just before the Civil War ended, and Linden Place once again fell to disputed ownership. When no one in Bristol came forth to buy it, it was put up for auction. The next owner turned out to be Theodora DeWolf Colt, daughter of George, who had fled 40 years ago. She had come to Bristol with her 3 youngest children. Her 3 youngest children were LeBaron, Isabel, and Samuel Pomeroy Colt. The children were all given an education. Using his education, Sam quickly became a wealthy young man and was involved in several businesses. He was also a great benefactor to the town, in that he provided it with his first ambulance, and he saw the all-over construction of the first water system, bringing water piped directly into private homes. Another of Sam's gifts to the town was the neighboring Colt Memorial School. He had it built to honor his mother after her death. Sam had also created a huge dairy farm from 4 old colonial farms in the Poppasquash part of town, giving employment to further Bristolians. Years after his death, the farm was taken over by the state of Rhode Island to become Colt State Park. It is evident that Sam's good deeds did a lot to erase the stigma which George had left over the town of Bristol.
Hello, I'm Raymond Murray, commander of the historic Bristol Train of Artillery here in Bristol, Rhode Island. The Bristol Train of Artillery was originally incorporated in February 12th, 1776 in Bristol. It was one of the many militias that were standing up at that time, preparing for what ultimately would be the Revolutionary War. Well, a museum is the Bristol Train of Artillery Historic Armory. The present building was constructed around 1840. It contains artifacts from the Revolutionary War, many from the Civil War, and artifacts from other conflicts up to, I should say, World War I, when the concept of National Guard kind of overshadowed the previous militias, and at that time, the historic militias became ceremonial, and that's certainly what we are today. The organization is busy maintaining the armory itself. We started about 20 years ago with a roof down a renovation, and we do everything we can to keep it historically correct. We've got a major project going on now where a huge display case is being rebuilt to kind of complement the Great Hall in the museum areas. And this afternoon we have the opportunity of showing off our new colonial uniforms. So our 40-plus members, in addition to being the individuals that don the uniforms and participate in parades in Bristol, Gatsby Day parade's coming up. We have our celebrations on Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and we also support the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts in Bristol. The Armory is always there to support the sports teams at Bristol High School. The BTA, as we know it, is the only Rhode Island historical militia remaining. To my knowledge, it has had an unbroken charter since that time. So, well over 200 years, we've been an organization in one form or another that has always been together. We're really there to preserve a little bit of Bristol's history, Rhode Island history, and our national history. And for those interested, we'd love to meet you.
Hi, I'm Mike DeMello, Fire Chief for the Bristol Fire Department. The Bristol Fire Department and its volunteers came into existence in the early 1800s on Thames Street during the Industrial Age. There were several pump houses located on Thames Street that housed several different types of hand-drawn fire apparatus. As time went on, the need to organize these firefighting personnel became more apparent. And in 1836, the first chartered hydraulic fire company was formed.
The company was founded in 1836 originally and became a chartered organization in 1843, making it one of the oldest chartered volunteer fire companies in the country. To my right here is our original hand tub. So this is a water tub. The water being placed into the center of the tub, pumped by hand on either side, which would pressurize your water and get it down the hose lines. So this is our 1934 Aaron's Fox fire truck. It's original to the Heights Company. It's run on a 6-cylinder gasoline engine. It's still operational. We do use it for parades.
Hi, I'm William Van Vost from the Defiance Hose Company No. 1. The Defiance Hose Company was established in 1903. We were chartered in 1905. We protect the northern part of Bristol. We have a reserve pumper, we have a frontline pumper, and we have a brush truck. Our backup apparatus, our reserve apparatus is set up for brush control. We have a part of town. that has limited water supply. We have to pump out of swimming pools and ponds and stuff, so our reserve truck is set up for that.
My name is Aries Medeiros, and I'm currently the Deputy Chief of the Dreadnought Hook Ladder and Hose Company No. 1. Dreadnought Hook Ladder and Hose Company No. 1 was originally established around 1843. The Dreadnought name is two names put together, dread and knot. People normally assume that dreadnought means either battleship or guitar, which it does, but the way we spell it means fear nothing. Stationed here at the Dreadnoughts, we currently have the Marine Unit, Marine 1, our Heavy Rescue, which is Truck 6, our ladder truck, Ladder 1, and we also house the Fog Squad, which is Engine 4. In 1899, our station suffered a fire. It was replaced with the current one that we see here in early 1900s, and the addition in 1960 to house, at the time, a snorkel fire apparatus.
The men and women of this fire department continue in the finest traditions and dedication to the community of Bristol, and will continue to do so for many years to come.
Hi, my name is Sarah Klein, and I'm the Director of the Bristol Department of Parks and Recreation here in beautiful Bristol, Rhode Island. I'd like to welcome you to our community center, give you a little history on how we acquired this great building and what we're using it for.
In 2006, the federal government's Department of Defense, through the Base Realignment and Closure Process, known as BRAC, identified the Quinta Gamelin Army Reserve Center in Bristol for realignment. So all agencies interested in acquiring the building had to submit a proposal outlining how they would reuse the building. The town of Bristol's proposal detailed how the building would be transformed into a vibrant community center, as well as a year-round home of the Bristol Department of Parks and Recreation. Because in 2013, following an 8-year decommission process, the building was given to the Bristol Department of Parks and Recreation for free and to use in perpetuity. We are now in our 5th year of operation and have built an amazing community here. We have great instructors that run health and wellness programs for all ages. We have a drop-in teen center. We run children's programs in sports, dance, theater, robotics. We have adult programs in men's and women's basketball, volleyball, pickleball, badminton. Our signature program is the Bristol summer camp called Camp Papasquaw. We'll have about 500 children in the town that will spend their summers with us down at the Town Beach and Sports Complex. And we have lots of activities, and it's just a beautiful spot. We also have support groups that meet here. We run many special events.
Hi, we're standing in the middle of the Garden of Hope. The Garden of Hope was built in collaboration with the Gloria Gemma Foundation to recognize and support all women suffering from breast cancer. And it's really created to be a peaceful place of contemplation and memory. We've done a lot of development in our parks. We have 19 parks in Bristol, and they're utilized for a variety of different purposes. So at the Town Beach, we've renovated the whole facility down there, and we have 4 soccer fields and 4 baseball fields, baseball, softball field. We have 2 beach volleyball courts, picnicking, 2 basketball courts, tennis courts. Pretty much anything you need to do, you can do down at the Town Beach recreationally.
The Parks and Recreation Department has a long and storied history in Bristol, and because of that, we are fortunate to receive tremendous support from our town leaders and the general public. And our hope is to continue servicing our community with a wide variety of programs and activities for all ages and for all residents.
The Audubon Society of Rhode Island is the state's oldest conservation organization, founded in 1897 to help protect against the slaughter of birds. We're an independent organization separate from National Audubon. Today, we still strive to protect birds and other wildlife. but we also look to educate people about nature and encourage them to protect our valuable natural resources. The Audubon Society of Rhode Island is very proud to have one of the strongest environmental education programs in the state. The Audubon Society Environmental Education Center opened to the public in 2000. The land had belonged to the Deloria family, who were all well known in Bristol in the early 1900s. Most of the property was a farm where corn and other crops were grown. When Claire Deloria McIntosh left her 25-acre property in Bristol to the Audubon Society in 1992, she wished Audubon to preserve the property in its natural state, or sell it and use the proceeds towards the purchase of other land of comparable nature that people might enjoy. Recognizing the unique combination of habitat in this long, narrow property in Bristol, Audubon decided to build the Environmental Education Center in order to engage the community with nature-related programs, lectures, walks, and summer camp. Our naturalists see over 20,000 kids in the classroom. They come here to our Environmental Education Center, as you've seen, and we're also out on the trails, bringing kids out into nature so they have a hands-on, scientifically based experience where they can learn about nature outside. Well, it's really important to reach out to kids at an early age so that they have a good understanding of the environment, because if they understand it as leaders in the future, they will have the resources and the love of nature that they will want to help protect it. While children particularly enjoy the aquarium exhibits and special family programs, adults come for lectures, birding classes, and guided walks. Easy walking trails start from the center and take visitors through the meadow to a boardwalk that intersects the East Bay Bike Path. The boardwalk winds through a variety of natural habitats, including maple swamp, coastal marshlands, and ends with a beautiful view of Narragansett Bay. In September, we have an event called Raptor Weekend. Thousands of people come out to see hawks, owls, eagles, osprey, you name it. It's a really fun event. We are proud to protect important habitat in this coastal town. And I hope to see you all out on the trails very soon.
Bristol is a wonderful community. We're lucky to be here. It's a microcosm, really, of American society. RW came to Bristol in 1969, and we have been part of the community ever since. We started out pretty small. We were on about 40 acres of land. Now we're on 140 acres of land. We had a couple thousand students early on, and now we have more than 4,000 undergraduates, plus continuing study students, graduate students, law students. So we're between 5,000 and 6,000 students all in. It's not been dramatic growth in the sense that we are taking over the community, but we certainly are a bigger footprint now than we were a few years ago. Our purpose in being an undergraduate institution is to make sure that the students that we have are being prepared for the world they're going to go into. And sometimes people think that means that we need to train them how to be an engineer or an accountant, and of course that's true. But beyond that is we need to educate them how to be a great citizen. And in order to do that, we have to create opportunities for them to engage in the broader community while they're still undergraduates, so they understand what that world is all about, and teach students how engaging with the community in the right way creates these kinds of mutual benefits. This is their home for 4 years, and we want them to treat that home in the same way they would their hometown.
Since 2005, Roger Williams' annual tradition has been to send the entire incoming class of students out to do a day of service throughout our community. At the end of the day, our faculty, staff, incoming students, and returning students have logged about 6,500 hours of service in about 25 different nonprofits in the area. We want students to engage in the community that will be their home for the next 4 years so that they begin to see it as it's theirs and they become invested in it. The Dean of our School of Architecture has worked very closely with the Bristol Conservation Commission and the Rhode Island Tree Council to work on tree mapping and planting. And what we've done is arm our students with the knowledge and the tools to go out and help others learn how to be great stewards of the trees. We've worked with Save the Bay for the Community Connections program every year since 2005, since our first year, and we participated in it as part of the International Coastal Cleanup. So our students go out and do 2 locations in the area along with staff from Save the Bay. The students learn about the importance of stewardship of the Bay, how important it is to economic development in the state. But they also do some wonderful work that day through service. It's picking things up, it's recording the debris that's picked up so that people can then analyze what kinds of pollutants are coming in. Franklin Court is one of our favorite sites. Obviously, students who are coming here have left their homes, their home communities, and oftentimes their grandparents. We send 2 teams into Franklin Court every year. They play bingo, they wash cars, they help serve meals. There's some great intergenerational conversations that happen that day, and it is a wonderful thing to see the seniors welcome our students into their home, because the most important thing is this is a partnership. It's not just going in and serving upon people, but working with people. And the beauty of our service programs is that they're as fluid as the issues and concerns that arise in the community. Our job is to really meet the community where those needs are and to do what we can to match them with the wonderful resources and the expertise and time and talent of the folks here, whether they're faculty, staff, or students.
Here I am in the beautiful town of Bristol, standing beside the harbor. I'm standing on the East Bay Bike Path. The entire path runs 14.5 miles from Bristol to Providence. The Bristol portion of the path runs for 3.87 miles along Bristol Harbor and through Colt State Park to Warren. The Bristol, Warren, and Barrington portions are officially named after my father, Thomas H. Burns, Jr., who is known, especially in Bristol, as the father of the East Bay Bike Path. Although immensely popular, with over 1 million visitors per year, its proposal in 1980 was met with much skepticism, suspicion, derision, and outright hostility. The land was purchased for $200,000 by the state of Rhode Island in 1976. In 1978, while in Europe, my parents observed the use of the bicycle as a means of efficient, low-impact, alternate transportation. In early 1980, my dad, by then a member of the state legislature, introduced a bill to create a study commission for use of the bicycle as an alternate form of transportation.
And out of that commission, which operated for about 2 years, came several plans and a couple of laws pertaining to bicycles that apply today. Out of that also came a recognition of the fact that bicycles were a viable mode of transportation.
As Ed Wood, DOT director in 1982, stated, a bike path along the bay would help bring an important part of Rhode Island's coastline back to the people. Newspaper headlines documented the heated opposition to the path, mostly by abutters in Barrington and Bristol. It was even referred to as a criminal's highway.
It's like anything else, and when people don't know what they're getting, they're leery of it.
As Governor Edward Dupree came under intense pressure to stop the path, a letter of opposition had even been written to President Ronald Reagan's chief of staff. Opposition grew so heated that after my dad served as Bristol Town Administrator, he founded an advocacy group known as Friends of the Bike Path in 1985. They tirelessly spoke with any local group that would listen. On April 13, 1985, the Friends of the Bike Path held a Walk the Path event, along with many supporting groups like the Hikers Club of Rhode Island, Save the Bay, the Rhode Island Audubon Society, the Rhode Island Bike Coalition, and others. Signatures of support were collected, with many Bristolians signing their names and walking along the proposed route of the path. Less than 1 week later, Governor Dupree approved construction of the path. By 1987, opposition had died down and most agreed that the path was an unqualified success.
I walk the beautiful bike path of Bristol almost every day. I live in the center of town, and it's my favorite thing to do and relieves all my stress.
After over 30 years, the bike path is more popular than ever.
This afternoon we're standing here in front of my grandfather's house, Caesar Brito, which is actually a landmark here in Bristol.
So the house was built in 1948. Our grandfather, Caesar Brito, built the house, had contractors come in and build the house for him, but he was the original owner of the house.
Our grandfather was between 2 and 3 years old. He arrived here on a sailing ship in Fall River, Massachusetts. And actually at that time, it was probably around 1905, I think it was. And he traveled here to Bristol in a wagon, obviously drawn by a horse. And that was the meager beginning of him being a Bristolian. You know, he grew up here in town. He worked several different jobs. He worked at a mill not too far from here.
Little by little, as our dad grew, they formed a business that was really a landscaping business and developed into them buying actually their first bulldozer.
Behind the house back then were all farmlands, and they began putting in roads and digging foundations for houses that were being built back there. And from that they progressed a little at a time to putting in water lines and sewer lines, and eventually got into natural gas, which was the early 60s. And from there, that was the beginning of C. Brito Construction Company. As far as the design of the house, it was on a piece of paper that he started to sketch things out in his rough way. It was something that was definitely architecturally different for Bristol. Well, there are a couple of houses in Bristol that have some stonework, but not to the magnitude of this. The home has become quite a landmark, not only in Bristol, but in Rhode Island. It's when the weather is conducive, obviously we're in the winter right now and things are pretty dormant, but the lawn is striped and we have a big American flag we put up for the 4th of July. And when individuals are having their families driving in, they actually say, when you get to Caesar Brito's house with the striped lawn, turn left.
Or the house with the pink gates.
Or the house with the pink gate.
One other thing I think about the property that's unique and makes it sort of a Bristol landmark was that our grandfather built a swimming pool in the backyard, and it was probably at the time touted as, you know, the first or second swimming pool in town. He really cared that his lawn and his yard and his flowers were all sort of the nicest you'd see. It was a big source of pride to him.
Today, Audrey and I are the ones that are the caregiver for the yard and for the house. So between the two of us, we feel that we have the property pretty much the way it was before. Today, the property is used extensively by the family. Audrey has 2 sons that don't live in the area. They come up with their families and stay here. During the summer, the pool is in full use. So it's a very strong unit that we use to pull the family together during the summers.
I started commercial fishing when I was 13. Started on the bay, quail hogging, back in the late 70s, mid 70s. I did that for a number of years. I ended up going to URI and going through their marine fisheries school. That led me down to Point Judith, where I worked on fishing boats, and over to New Bedford, where I worked on some scallop boats also. I saved my money. I got a little dragger in Point Judith, a 50-foot dragger down there, and fished that for a number of years with a partner. And my wife got pregnant, and she let me know I could have a fishing boat or a family. And we went with the family, the boat went. At that point, I started selling fish over New Bedford. I got to know a lot of the infrastructure, the people that buy the fish, and how all that works. Aquaculture industry was really in its infancy. I just started thinking about growing oysters. There was a few other guys in the state doing it, and I decided that I'd try to make a go of it. I leased 3 acres from the state of Rhode Island. On that lease, I have 12 or 13 trawl lines. Basically, it's keeping the oyster bags and cages clean so the water can flow through the cages themselves. The oysters are filter feeders, so they depend on the current to bring all their food to them, and then they filter it out of the water. If I don't keep the bags and the cages clean, the water won't flow past the oysters at a good rate, and they'll starve. We harvest the oysters, and we'll pour the bags out. We'll pick through them, we'll keep the keepers, and put anything that's small back in the water to keep growing. Usually 24 to 36 months on my lease to get to harvest size. Other leases can do it a little bit quicker. Some of the guys grow on the surface. There's pluses and minuses with all types of growing. I always wanted a restaurant, yes. Since I was a little kid, it was one of those bucket list things didn't realize at all what it entailed. It was very naive going into it, but I'm happy that I worked through it and I've got something that I'm proud of. And I got an opportunity to get a spot through a friend that owns the building down here, and I jumped at it. So today we've got some equidnaks. We usually try to keep around 10 or 12 in stock. We deal primarily with a Rhode Island oyster. The reason we do that is twofold, but primarily I can get the oysters directly from the fishermen, and I can have them in my case the same day that they come out of the water. And as far as Bristol goes, the people are great, the town is fantastic. I really enjoy being right where I am.
My name is Joe DuPont, North Coast Boats. I came to this country in 1973. Bristol, stay here all these years, start building boats. And in 1998, I decided to start my own company, building North Coast Boats.
My name is Cesar DuPont, and let's take a tour of North Coast Boats. Welcome to our production facility. This is one of the beginning steps of building a North Coast boat. What you see here is a fiberglass mold that we use in order to lay various layers of fiberglass inside in order to produce all of the fiberglass parts. What you see right here is the first layer on one of the North Coasts, and this is obviously the hull. As you can see here, we've now applied more layers of fiberglass, and the entire structure of the boat is starting to form. At this stage, we've now completed all of the fiberglass on the hull. What you see on the inside is basically the skeleton, or what we call a stringer system. This gets put in place and it gets filled with flotation foam. Once the stringer system is in place, we now have added a forward pan, which basically creates the interior of the hull.
So here is a hull, just came out of the mold after the interior gets glue in. And now it came out of the mold, it's going to the trim room, then after it's going to the patch room, then after that it's going to the assembly. Here's a finished hull here. It was just got trim and patch. It's ready to go to the assembly.
Here you see the deck. This is basically made the same way as the hull that we've previously shown you. This is at the stage where it's come out of the mold. It's also been trimmed and patched, and now it's getting ready to go into assembly where all of the hardware will be assembled on it.
My name is Craig DuPont, and I'm going to show you guys how we assemble a North Coast boat. So this is a 21 North Coast. This is the actual hull and deck we just saw in the patch room. It's now fully patched, fully trimmed, ready for assembly. As you can see, all the hardware is installed, and we actually have a mechanic hanging an engine as we speak.
I hope you've enjoyed your time you've spent with us here at North Coast Boats and watching the production of a North Coast 21 hardtop.
Our town is Bristol, Rhode Island, settled in 1680. We are also nicknamed the most patriotic town in America. One of the things that makes our town extra special, I think, is because we're surrounded by water on three sides. We have the Narragansett Bay, Mount Hope Bay, and the Kickamuit River. From any point in town, about a 2-minute ride, you will be at the shore. And it's a beautiful views. Nice restaurants, parks, just a nice place to be. I do call it a small town. There are 3,000 people that live in town. There is also Roger Williams University, which has about 4,000 students and a law school. And they do bring youthful energy to the town, so it's a nice mix. We are also home to the new Rhode Island Veterans Home, the only facility like this in Rhode Island. My father was a World War II veteran. He was living at the older facility and didn't quite get to make it to this one. His name was Carlton Buddy Mott. He grew up in Bristol. My son makes Generation 5 in the family homestead. The house is not new. It was built 17 years before Abraham Lincoln was born. Recently we did a renovation project, and my father said he had built the the little addition with the help of his mom when he was 17, and he was right. We found this in the wall from 1941. He had no idea that just a few months later he would be on a ship fighting for his life and his country. The reason why I wanted to do this piece, it seemed like the veterans were always well received at the parade. The Vietnam veterans, not like the others. So I came up with the idea of 6 people standing together that looked like the flag. When the Vietnam vets came by, I said to my friends, can we please stand near the road? I said, and I want to just clap for the Vietnam veterans. So when they came by, we were all smiling and clapping. And the next thing you know, they slowed down a bit, and one saluted us. And he had tears in his eyes. So we stood up straight and tall, saluted back, and at that moment it seemed like it changed. It was just such a wonderful welcome for them. So for years we marched with the Vietnam veterans. And we were even invited in 1990 during the Desert Shield Desert Storm to march in the Macy's Parade. So the parade starts, when the festivities start on Flag Day, June 14th. And they go on, obviously the big culmination is the parade. If you've never seen it, it's worth seeing. I hope you do. See you at the parade.
Hey! On this day in 1785, in the town of Bristol, Rhode Island, the Reverend Henry Wright of the First Congregational Church and a veteran of the Revolutionary War conducted the first patriotic exercises in honor of our nation's independence. As you enjoy the festivities of the day, let us never forget the sacrifices made by each American generation to secure the promises of the Declaration of Independence.
Guys, smile for the camera. Smile for the camera. Say happy Fourth. Happy Fourth. There you go. Oh.
We're so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air.
And talking to Pete Party here about summers in Bristol.
So you're saying before you lived here, you used to spend summers here?
My goodness, yes, we never lived here till after the war.
Oh.
But we spent almost every summer of my life here. But Blytheville, there's a pillar on either side of the entrance at the water side with a ledge that's about 4 feet off the ground, maybe 3.5. And Dad conceived the idea that it would be possible to stand between the 2 columns, jump up, spread his legs, and land with a foot on each ledge. I don't have a photograph of him doing it, but I have a photograph of my stupid cousin Skilly, my father's nephew, doing it. I do recall being told by my mother that she remembers that my uncle and my father used to borrow Aunt Bessie Van Wickle's motorized vehicle of some sort and cruise downtown with it.
And Aunt Bessie Van Wickle was of Blythewold fame. She was
my grandfather's sister.
Speaking of Blythewold, you remember Blythewold and being down on the water, and
I learned to swim there. And cousin Augustine was my godmother. So she's the one that gave me a full boat kayak on my 16th birthday, I think. I went in the 38 hurricane. I just barely remember that. It had a porch on the second story, and I remember being on that. I don't know why, but that was before the hurricane. The new old yacht club was designed by Normie Herreshoff.
Right.
Who was brother to Sid and cousin to Captain Nat. No, nephew of Captain Nat. There's a strong Bristol connection because one of the consultants on the bridge for Vanderbilt was George Howe, who is, of course, a cousin, because the Howes and DeWolfs have been intermarried for many years. And George Howe was the one who said, painted green. These are what the lights should be like. These are what the cable lights should be like. And it was beautiful. And the lights on the cables only went on occasions.
Yeah, it used to be that they would go on for things like, Christmas and 4th of July and Thanksgiving.
And I spent 2 weeks working on the bridge.
So what was your fall prevention mechanism when you were painting it?
Oh, one hand for yourself, one hand for the bridge and the paintbrush.
Our town, Bristol, is made possible by the following premier sponsor: C. Brito Construction Company. Contractors for utilities emergencies and utility installation, ranging from pipeline spot improvement programs to technical projects. Family owned and operated for more than 75 years. And the following benefactor sponsors: Herreshoff Marine Museum, preserving the legacy of Herreshoff manufacturing and its history of innovation through exhibits, programming, and STEAM education program. North Coast Boats, boat builders of fishing and recreational boats for more than 40 years. Family owned and operated. Bristol Oyster Bar, serving locally harvested oysters, farm-to-table dining since October of 2014. And by the following patron sponsor: Linda Aruda.